It's time to stop recreating your childhood. For real. You wasted enough time already. Have you ever had that moment when you just stop and think, why does this keep happening to me? And I don't mean losing your keys, but this thing that keeps on happening. You get hurt the same way. You get betrayed, you get cheated on. You end up feeling the same thing over and over again, as if your life is this loop that you can't get out of. Hold that thought. Let's play a little game. I'm going to offer you some phrases, and I want you to let me know what resonates. You can do it in the comments. No matter what I do, I always end up back in the same place. I keep choosing the wrong people, the wrong relationships, the wrong situations. I sabotage things even when I don't want to. I feel like I should be further along by now. I know something's wrong, but I can't figure out what. I've tried everything, but I still feel empty, lost, and disconnected. I feel like I'm carrying something heavy, but I just don't know how to put it down. I know exactly what is wrong with me, but I cannot for the life of me move past it. So if any of these phrases sound something like the things that you usually say, that tells me that you at least know something is off and you just can't seem to break free from it. But what you may not know is that you may be actually repeating some childhood patterns. Like life keeps happening to you, it seems like you have no say, no control. And even if you're consciously trying to control things, you just can't seem to do it. So you're an adult with the supposed agency of an adult, but it doesn't seem that you have any agency over how your life goes, over how people constantly treat you, over how situations keep repeating, no matter what it is that you try and do so that they don't. So it's as if you're this little child and you still live in your childhood home and you're still treated the same way, but maybe this time is not by your parents. Hopefully they don't continue to treat you that way, but other people, partners, bosses, friends. It's as if your entire life has been the same theme. You just show up to that same scene to record it over and over again, looking like a different person with different people in different settings, but it's the same thing. It's the same exact same thing. And at some point, it's beginning to feel like life is working against you because you take one step forward and it seems like then you're taking 5 steps back. You keep ending up in the same toxic relationships with different yet so same people. Hopefully, they're getting hotter at least. But so it seems like you are getting in your own way because you're like, but I know these things. Oh, the red flags. Oh, this thing keeps happening to me. Why do I keep doing this? I've got good news and some bad news for you. The good news is that your life and what's been happening to you is not random. Like, there's an explanation for this. And it's been playing out the same way, with the same patterns, with the same themes, and the same roles. The faces shift, the setting may shift, but somehow it's always the same story. There's a reason for that. And we will explore the reason, of course. But the bad news is that you are kind of behind all of this reason. You're kind of the author of this play that you keep replaying and recreating. You're like the author of this story. An affected, influenced, and traumatized author. An author under toxic influence. Trauma. To be exact, your subconscious mind is doing this in purpose. If something keeps repeating in the same theme and as the same pattern, we're looking at a subconscious effort to recreate our past. And these patterns that we keep recreating becomes this compulsion that we can't seem to get out of. First of all, because we're driven subconsciously to continue to do it. And second of all, we have absolutely no skills to do differently. In this video, I will explain how our childhood continues to influence our life long after we've outgrown, at least age-wise, the childhood years. And we're also going to see how our subconscious mind continues to recreate our childhood in the effort of resolution. But as I said before, it ends up being compulsive, a repetition, by trying the same thing over and over and over again, which, as most of us already know, the famous quote that Einstein said, doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results is insanity. And no, you're not insane, but you are driving yourself insane, for sure, right? When you keep going through these patterns and you're like, why don't I learn? Why can't I just learn? Why can't I just do differently? I could know better. I should know better. The other thing that we will see in this video, of course, is I'm going to help you identify these patterns. I'm going to lay out a little process for you. And of course, understand what needs to be done in order to stop repeating them altogether. So it's not just identifying them or realizing them or even healing them, is also making sure that you create sustainable results and changing your ways. Now, let's begin. My life personally has been a nonstop loop. I kept experiencing the same thing over and over again. The theme was very clear and it was repeated. And I had quite a few dramatic themes in my life. And every time that same thing would happen, I'd dwell in my misery and feel like it was so unfair that life kept happening to me. Why is this happening to me? Like as if I had nothing to do with it. Because meanwhile, all of this was happening to me, I was not changing my ways or my choices, by no means. I was doing the same thing. I was choosing the same type of people, thinking the exact horrible things about myself, having the exact horrible and self-destructive coping mechanisms as ever. And it felt like I figured out the exact formula how to, with accuracy, lead myself to misery by pretending that I was trying to get myself to happiness. I was not trying to be happy. Let's get this clear. Supposedly I was, but in reality I was driven, as I said before, with mathematical accuracy to the same miserable result, which became like a second home to me. It felt very familiar to keep going back to that place. So I was just stuck in a past that I never took time to resolve, but supposedly I was trying to change by recreating it. Now, why do we keep repeating the same patterns? Why are we stuck in our childhood? First of all, I want you to know that your subconscious mind may feel like your worst enemy, and it kind of is in a few ways. But in reality, it's not working against you per se. It's working against your happiness because it's only trying to keep you alive and survive. Our subconscious mind thrives on making sure that we are safe by having a very specific pattern recognition and a kind of idea what's happening next, right? So if we are working in a factory doing the same thing over and over again, that's going to make our subconscious mind very, very comfortable and safe, although it will make us miserable. But our subconscious mind knows exactly what we're doing. There's no surprises. There's no things to look out for. The routine, the mundane routine, be it in work or drama, is keeping our subconscious mind less busy with trying to figure out what's dangerous, how to predict this, how to prevent the other. And it just keeps us in this secure prison by having us do the same thing over and over again, because at least we know exactly how to deal with it. But also the subconscious mind holds a type of wisdom or a way that it processes things when we are traumatized in the past, which by trauma, I don't mean a monumental event. It could just be, maybe you were a child and somebody grabbed your little bicycle and set it on fire. Or maybe they took your toy and they stepped on it and threw it away. They did something that was for you as a child painful. They told you something horrible, maybe even something serious happened. You were injured, that you were told many horrible things, you were hurt, you saw somebody you loved get hurt. So you witnessed and experienced something that was too much and too hard for you. Your memory took in that event and said, I don't know how to store this event because I don't understand it. This is very confusing to me. What is happening to me? Because nobody was there to come to you and sort of explain this is what happened or repair if they were the ones that hurt you. You had to somehow go back to normalcy after some event that caused you so much distress. And so your little mind said, I don't know how to move on from this. And so I'm going to be stuck in this. And I'm going to keep trying to see how I can resolve this in my mind. So it's almost like you're standing in front of a wall and you're trying to sing songs to this wall so you can finally make it kind of like become something you can pass through, because you are assuming that there's a solution to what happened so that you can actually progress and move on from this. Which means that we hold in our mind a lot of these memory capsules, right? This moments where the time got stuck because we do not understand how to move through what is happening to us. And we just have a lot of feelings, a lot of pain, a lot of confusion, and we don't know what's happening. So the effort of the mind in order to move on from that is, let's continue to recreate it until we figure it out. It's like a problem that we can't solve and we don't know how to let go, because we're like, I have to resolve it or else I can't move on. Which means that our minds in that manner are only seeking for resolution of the past, and they're using present time as the playground for that. So our current life is being used by our subconscious mind as an effort to resolve our past. And for a lot of us, that past was insane. So you can imagine that most of the things that we're doing, we're trying to recreate the relationships that we have, the incidents that we have, the feelings that we had, to kind of bring us back to that familiar space and try and get a different result. Which rarely happens, because we choose the exact settings and the exact people that are going to bring us back to the same issue and the same pain. Which again is kind of a win-win for the subconscious mind, because in that space we feel comfortable. If we are abandoned again, we can really dwell in this familiar feeling of abandonment and betrayal and feeling not good enough. Can you imagine that all of a sudden we're not abandoned and we're with that person that we thought was going to abandon us? Now we don't know how to navigate that, right? So in a way, we're pursuing resolution, but in reality, also the means through which we're pursuing resolution make it so that resolution is impossible, and what is becoming possible is this predictable loop that brings us always back to the same familiar result, a kind of familiar sense of home within ourselves, because that's what we feel and what we have felt our entire lives. So what sets the scene for these compulsive repetitions and how we identify what is familiar, we always want to go towards what is familiar, is our childhood blueprint, right? And everything that we're doing today, it can be connected back to that past, how we attach to others, how we see ourselves, the risks we take or don't take. They're all based on messages and patterns formed in our childhood. That was the moment in our lives where we were given the blueprint on how to do things. So whatever we absorbed in those formative years then became the tools and the ideas and the concepts and the beliefs that we hold deep within, so that we can think that we can navigate life. And what do? We go out to navigate a new life, or our life, by using the exact same strategies of the past, and we are trying to also recreate the past. So we are constantly, throughout our lives, reliving our pasts because we cannot move through them. So the beliefs that we created through our childhood, through what we witnessed, through all of these moments of stuckness that we didn't even know how to understand things, and we would stay stuck in those moments, or the other thing that we would do is come to this overgeneral thing that was somehow our fault. So this must be happening to me because I'm bad. This must be happening to me because I'm unworthy. I'm not good enough. This must be happening to me because I'm doing something wrong. It's because of me. Children cannot understand that the adult in front of them is the problem. They're thinking, if this person is treating me this way, it's my fault. So we shape who we are and what we believe. We stay stuck in our resolved moments that we only kind of like put this lid on that says, oh, I'm unworthy. I'm not good enough. And these moments just loop and loop and loop inside our heads, confirming constantly this belief every time we come back to the same belief through our lives. We're like, oh, okay, well, we're back to this. This feels right? So these beliefs that were shaped in childhood became the way we perceive ourselves, love, relationships, people, the world, all of it. And for the rest of our lives, we'll seek familiar ways to go back and land on those beliefs. like we're trying to solve the same mathematical equation that is somehow always stuck at the same point, right? We have the board and we're just writing and writing, and then we just stay stuck. We just stay stuck. And we just can't seem to resolve it, because maybe you're just like me and suck at math, but also what happens is we don't know how to solve these equations. We haven't seen ourselves out of these mental prisons that we're stuck in. We need more knowledge beyond the math that we learned when we were in a younger age, first grade, because this may be advanced math that cannot be resolved in a little abacus that we're like, oh, this thing, it's not working. So in a way, what is happening is we're leading our lives looking like adults with the supposed needs of an adult, or trying to act like an adult, but we are driven by childlike needs of a resolution of a past that we are not even aware of, but we keep reliving, right? It's undeniable. At some point, you're like, this, you gotta be joking. Like, it can't be that every relationship ends the same way. It can't be that every friend does the same thing to me. It can't be this, it can't be that. And I'm the first to say there's also personal accountability and us being the common denominator. And that's exactly what we're talking about. In the sense, not only what was our responsibility for that to have happened and how we contributed to that traumatic pattern to continue to happen, but also at some point we realized that we've been choosing these people consecutively, and we haven't learned or figured out a way to stop choosing these people or show up differently, so that the theme of our life changes. Nothing changed. As I said before, with me, my inner conversation was the same, my coping skills were the same, my choices were exactly the same thing. And so we continue to do that. So which is why in order to resolve these patterns that we have, we must come back and contribute to this equation that little us is trying to resolve with the abacus, and bring in adult-like knowledge, not math, but wisdom, understanding, empathy, other tools, so that we can help that younger version make sense of that experience in a way that it actually understands it. So it's not like with an adult being like, oh, your father burned your bike, but you know what it is? He's just traumatized. It's fine. You're going to break generational trauma one day. Haha, let me hug you. This is amazing. No, we have to come back with the wisdom and empathy of an adult, but we have to have the language of that a child can understand. A child is not going to comprehend any of this spiritualism that has been attributed to trauma. And the child just wants to be seen, wants to grieve, wants to be heard, wants to be understood, and wants something to help it snap out of that moment gradually and with empathy and kindness, not some generic phrase that sounds spiritual but means absolutely nothing to the child. I have to talk about what I think about all these phrases in another video, so let's just leave it at that. So then we bring them into wholeness, and in a way we're bringing our system into a balance, right? We outgrow that little child because we finally let it experience, and they're now unstuck, right? So that memory is no longer holding us back with all of these beliefs and all of these things that are trying to somehow understand a world based on an insane example and blueprint of a world that they experienced, right? Using that as an example on how to navigate life, right? Using our problematic childhoods will make us be quite confused, because that was messy. That was completely unregulated. There was nobody there to bring in some order, to bring in some kindness, to take care of us. It was a mess. Yet we use that as a blueprint of everything, right? This microcosm of childhood then becomes the world of our adulthood. And it's really funny to observe the patterns afterwards, because when you see yourself from afar and you're like, why on earth was I tolerating that? But when you are going through those things and somebody can say, why are you tolerating that? You deserve better. You just don't grasp it. It doesn't make sense. only when you awaken to your inner anger, your sense of identity and self, wanting to protect that self, your self-respect, empathy for yourself, you will be so energized to automatically not tolerate certain things that you used to tolerate very easily. So doing all of this work with going back and getting in touch with ourselves and having empathy for ourselves and being kind to ourselves, right? So cultivating that relationship, that changes everything. Because for most of us, we live our lives hating ourselves. And it shows. Even if you're like, oh, I love myself, it shows. It shows by how you allow others to treat you, the life that you're leading, how you definitely treat yourself, and how you respond to your needs and who you are, right? So back to the patterns. To identify our patterns, we need a mix of self-reflection, curiosity, and a willingness to notice the ways we repeatedly respond to life's challenges, to relationships, to emotions. And here's how we can approach it. We need to observe recurring situations. Look at the patterns in your relationships, at work, self-talk, and your emotions. Do certain themes keep appearing, such as feeling rejected, not being enough, always taking on too much? Like, what is that theme? Pay attention to moments where you think, not this again. That's a sign of a repeating cycle. And again, I'm not saying when you lose the keys, although that in itself is also a kind of a way where we're punishing ourselves. For me, having to leave the house and every time look for my keys felt like a torture until I said to myself, listen, which sounds really dumb to even say it out loud, but that's what I said to myself. If you don't put them in a specific place, you will always leave the house and look for them. Why are you torturing yourself this way? The only way to resolve this is to put them always in the same place. Make your life easier and stop torturing yourself unnecessarily. You have enough confusion as it is. And that for me kind of like ended that. Besides, obviously, sometimes I may displace them, but now I have a rule about where keys go, and that's where they have to go. Because the intention is not just to find the keys and to be efficient and whatever. It's, I don't want to torture myself anymore with having to always look for things. I'm thinking to myself, I have all these things that I have to tend to and worry about. I don't want to worry about looking for keys. It felt like I was making my life more difficult. But nonetheless, the patterns that we're talking about here, even these little behaviors may hide something, but I'm going to invite you to look at the bigger and the broader theme for now, because the keys is the least of the things that I did to torture myself, right? I had to build that up to there where that was just a minor little thing that kind of just making some inconvenience and keeping me in confusion. It was distracting and overwhelming. So let me give you some ideas of the flavors and what we're looking for that seems to be repeating. For example, rejection. The feeling of not being chosen, not being valued, wanted, whatever, right? It's the same thing over, oh, nobody loves me, all of that drama. Abandonment, the deep sense of being left behind, emotionally or physically, and fearing that everybody's going to leave. So that visceral fear beyond obviously, you don't want to be left behind, and you don't want to lose the people you love, but we're talking about a different experience here, right? Another theme can be unworthiness, the belief that you're not enough, no matter how much you've been achieving. And you keep circling back to that belief no matter what you're doing. The other thing, which is very, very common for children raised in neglect, is a longing. There's always this ache for something just out of reach. Love, belonging, validation, success, anything that we just feel like it always stays in the longing. And I talk a lot about these themes when I talk about limerence, which I will create some more videos soon. The other thing that seems to be happening is betrayal, a pattern of trusting others and constantly having that trust broken. And at the same time, when we see it from afar, we're like, how on earth did I even trust that person? Nonetheless, there's a lot of things, right? Guilt. Constantly feeling guilty for things. So we're looking for these themes, these big themes in your life, and you can comment below which one is yours, which one seems to be the flavor of your life. And what we need to do is try to trace the patterns to where they were created through inner child work, where we have to revisit the parts of us that have been affected and have those experiences imprinted on them, and they're stuck in that moment, right? So they're recreating through our current patterns those experiences in the hope of resolution. And in this way, they're interfering in how we're trying to do life, no matter how much we're doing. So the idea is that through remembering back and processing all of this unprocessed trauma, we can finally move through it. All right, so to do this together today, let's try and do this together. I'm going to need you to focus, maybe get a pen and paper, or write these answers in the comments and just hit enter when you're done, and I'll see them later. The first thing we have to do is notice what is the theme, what is the repetition, what is our pattern. And here are some questions to ask ourselves. What is a recurrent struggle or situation in my life that makes me think, not this again? Are there certain types of relationships, romantic, friendships, work dynamics, where this pattern shows up the most? What feelings do I experience when this pattern repeats? When I look at different areas of my life, do I notice this same pattern playing out in different ways? Now that we have these answers, we're going to go for the next part where we're going to figure out the root cause. And some questions to ask yourself to figure out the root cause of your patterns is, when do I remember feeling this way for the first time? How did I respond to similar situations as a child or a teenager? And through this, we can also start seeing how we've adapted ourselves because of these patterns. Who did we become? The masks that we're wearing, codependency, people-pleasing. We're trying to be the fun person, the giving person, the fixer, whatever, right? Did I witness a parent, sibling, or a caregiver struggle with a similar pattern? Have I ever expected this pattern to happen before it even does? And you know that because when it happens, you're like, I knew it. I knew this was going to happen, but I did it anyway. I don't know why, but I did it anyway. That's a clear sign. Now, we're going to have to bring it back to how it plays out in our life. And to do that, maybe we can ask ourselves these following questions. How do I typically react when this pattern is triggered? Do I tend to avoid, overcompensate, blame myself, shut down, or control the situation? What is my way of coping? And what type of people or situations seem to activate this cycle in my life? Now let's look deeper. What is the underlying belief of the pattern that we've created, right? We're creating this pattern to cope with something, but what do we believe deeply? What is that lid that we put on the memory as a generic explanation to be like, okay, let's just put this under I'm unworthy and move on for the time being. What's the belief? And so we can ask ourselves, what belief might be driving this pattern? What is the generic, overgeneralized conclusion that I made? People always leave. I'm unworthy of love. I'm not enough. I'm unlovable. I'm a failure. I'm a mistake. Have I made decisions that unintentionally keep this pattern alive? If I was to imagine a version of myself that didn't have this pattern, what kind of life would I be leading? And now let's connect the past with the time that we're presently trying to live and choose from, which is so influenced, but let's see it and ask the following questions. How has this pattern influenced the decisions I've made in my life? Have I stayed in relationships, jobs, or friendships longer than I should because of this pattern? How has this pattern shaped the way I see myself and my worth? If I could go back in time and change one decision that was influenced by this pattern, what would it be? So what was the decision? So now we're opening this up. And now that we've identified the pattern and started remembering back to it, we have to go deeper. Because as I said before, we call it a pattern, But it's a way to conceptualize the brain wiring that is creating this process that we are calling a pattern is an inner child, meaning that memory capsule that holds the consciousness of the child that once were. When certain things happened to us, we concluded all sorts of things, and we created our core limiting beliefs and wrote a life of drama based on that ever since, right? The drama that we continue to live was created by our 7-year-old self, right? So we need to now investigate into the creation of the pattern, but in a way where we're truly connected to the moment that it was created. That inner child is a younger version of ourselves, stuck in time, waiting for resolution. And the only person that can access that child truly is yourself, right? No matter what you're told by other people, this is work that needs to happen internally by yourself. So how does one connect with their inner child? I have personally found that inner child work is best done in states of trance or hypnosis, which is why I built my foundational healing hypnosis program around this principle. For me, it's just easier access. I connect faster. My logical mind doesn't just yap all the way through the process, and I can actually feel what needs to be felt instead of analyzing my way through it. When I was deep in my own healing work, I had already accumulated way too much knowledge. I mean, I studied psychology. My first degree was on psychology in the efforts to understand myself, go figure. Did that help me? No. I resonated with a lot of what I read, and I could feel like, oh, I'm this, I have that, I have the others, like self-diagnosis. I got a degree in self-diagnosis, but I had too much knowledge after all of that. And after reading all of these books, understanding so many things conceptually when it comes to what is trauma, why is this, why is the other. But when it came to implementing anything, I was not really doing it because my mind kept shifting the narrative because I was finding ways to continuously avoid the pain by rationalizing and creating new loops to get stuck in. So when I was trying to do this with my logical mind, my willpower, implementing this, implementing the other, it was not happening for me until I discovered doing this type of work that I do today, which is why I created what I created based on this work. I have found it to be the most efficient because I needed a way to bypass resistance entirely. And that could be very common for us overthinkers, rationalizers, and people who have had a lot of trauma and have resorted to their mind in order to escape that trauma. So our mind has become an expert to take things and toy around and create new stories and confuse us more, everything and anything it can, just like when I said before, to lose my keys, to keep us preoccupied and busy and somehow struggling with something irrelevant. But at least we're not struggling and suffering from what really hurts, right? The mission here is to keep us disconnected from the parts of us that hold the pain. Because supposedly all that stuckness that we hold is very dangerous and scary. So our entire life is built on avoiding feeling that, right? So our conscious mind will talk a way out of it the more we can. But even if we do find the words for it, they're not connected to the feelings. So it's the typical going to talk therapy for a gazillion years and having no shifts, because now we know our story so well, we're becoming storytellers, as if we're watching ourselves live that story, but we're not that person, right? So for us, hypnosis is going to be key, finding ourselves into states where our thinking mind is not running the show, but we are in either trance or in deep meditation or following a hypnotic script that helps us just deal with what is being said rather than us thinking and trying to impose ourselves into that. That said, many people may not be willing or want to do hypnosis. So journaling is the next best thing. But we have to stay connected to the process of journaling and allow ourselves to truly enter the feeling states of the memories that we're trying to recall, right? The key isn't just to write the story, as I said before, even in therapy when we're talking about it, it's not just to talk about it as if we're telling someone else's story, but it's to let ourselves feel it. Almost like that letter or that journal entry is written by the part that actually suffered, right? We're truly giving it space to exist and to share the story without us imposing, oh, come on, it wasn't sort of a big deal. Come on, you're overreacting. What is this nonsense? Why am I doing this? Like, without any of that. Because most of us do journal from the logical mind, and we're analyzing our pasts like outsiders. A true inner child work through journaling means stepping into the memory, seeing through the eyes of the child that you were, and you're capturing what you felt in that moment, not just what you think about it right now, right? The way you see it as an adult is not the same way that that child saw it. And you have to allow for that child to have its space to express. And again, I say that child, this is you. And we say that child as a way to access your memories. Don't go thinking you have inner children all over the place and start feeling confused and more fragmented, right? This is just a way to conceptualize, because if we think back to, oh, my 5-year-old self, my 7-year-old self, ooh, what would they say if I asked them this? What would they think? How are they feeling? You would just allow yourself to channel that type of energy that holds that child, and to express through that, which means you're accessing your brain and your memory through that consciousness, right? The capsule needs the consciousness in which it was created so that it can be accessed and the memory can be released. This is a beautiful process. It's not woo-woo, by the way, and it's called memory reconsolidation, and it's incredible. And you can only see it when you do it, right? You can understand it when you do it, because you're hearing it, you'll be like, what is this nonsense? It's really good. But anyway, if you're drawn to journaling, it just requires more conscious effort to just stay in the process, right? To be like, okay, now I'm writing as the 12-year-old me, and just really stay with it. And then you can answer back or write as the adult and have this back and forth kind of thing. Again, sounds a little bit crazy, I know, but our mind works in a lot of ways to sustain us in a level of sanity that feels at least somewhat functional, but we're quite fragmented, we're confused, we're holding a lot of things. So a way to bring them back to kind of like some union and wholeness is when we're able to differentiate them and let them express and let them interact so that they can join. I'm going to give you some inner child reflection questions. I've said this before, inner child work, you have to learn how to do it. It's everywhere. If you want an easy layout way, I have this hypnotic program that you get 21 days of daily hypnosis that are addressing specific wounds of childhood and doing inner child work with all of these parts in a way that is structured and easy for you. You just dedicate half an hour a day. But either way, do or not do that program, you need to learn how to do inner child work. I've recommended books in other of my videos. There's a ton of things online, but I'm just going to give you some reflection questions for now so that you can continue this process. We have the theme, we have the pattern, we're just digging through that memory, and now we're going to do the following. We're going to imagine your younger self, the version that first experienced this pain. Where are they? What are they feeling? You're going to write down the whole thing. I'm here. I'm there, whatever. And you can do it as an observer. Oh, they're there and they're doing that. Or hopefully both, you're going to write it down as their experience, right? Like as if you're them, so that you can really connect with that. So first you observe it, then you let them do that. And when it's all done, you're going to ask yourself, if I could step into that moment, what do they need that they didn't get in that moment? And that requires empathy, right? You have to look at this like an adult. Oh, they just wanted a chocolate. That's why they were crying. Oh, their stupid bike was broken. That's what they're... No. Oh, their parent was yelling at them. Big deal. Parents yell all the time. No, they shouldn't. But also, that's not what they needed. They needed kindness. They needed empathy. They needed someone to be nice to them. And someone to be kind to them enough so that they don't internalize that horrible situation that was happening. And that is on you, right? To activate that empathic way of approaching yourself is the core of healing work. And so what would you say to them that was age appropriate based on what you know now, by bringing this adult-like wisdom and kindness and empathy? What is revolutionary about inner child work is that when you are able to look at your younger self with empathy, you have done the one thing that your narcissistic parent was not ever able to do. Give yourself empathy. True, genuine kindness and empathy, resonance, love, respect. When you give that experience to yourself and you see yourself through that lens, then this transforms the way you experience yourself. But it's not easy. You're not going to want to do it because you're like, because you hate yourself. For the most part, you probably really hate yourself. And also you don't know how to have empathy for yourself. And also you're expecting too much of yourself. And you're probably mocking yourself and telling yourself that you shouldn't be overreacting over these things and you should move on already. But you tried. And it's not working. You tried to willpower your way through this. You try to outrun your trauma like David Goggins. You try to rationalize. You try to do all the things. Maybe now just try and do this one and see what happens. Give yourself some time. Give yourself some time of practicing this way of interacting with the self and see what changes. Now, this is the process that I'm inviting you to do in order to help you figure out your patterns and work through what actually was the core of these patterns and to ignite that inner parent within to show up. So now we've healed, right? We've done the work there. And now what needs to happen so that these patterns do not continue to repeat is know that we're going to have to implement new ways. So we have to set some different boundaries with ourselves, different expectations, and we have to act differently. So just because we've done this, life won't magically change because we have to also act differently based on what we became aware of and what we felt about ourselves. So to conclude, inner child work is not optional anymore. You need to learn how to do it. Most of the patterns that you're going through are possibly created from your childhood, you trying to recreate your childhood. Connecting with your younger self and meeting their unmet needs, which shifts their emotional reality, is what will help you break free from the compulsive repetition, turning the instinct to continue to repeat it into a decision, which then you have to continue to interfere with by choosing differently. You do not have to read 55,000 books or get a PhD in psychology. Implementing every intervention you learn, like some people here, you just need to connect with the parts of you that experience pain, and as a result, they have remained stuck in time, repeating the same thing to hopefully resolve it and adapting in every single way possible, anything but being your authentic self, right? So patterns are not the problem here. They are a symptom of an unresolved issue and a sign that you're emotionally stuck in the past. So you may be stuck in recreating your childhood now, but that's not the problem. That's a symptom of a deeper problem. It's just an Ariadne's thread leading you to your inner world, if you're brave enough to follow it. There is a way out of this, and you can get unstuck. There are no wild, bloodthirsty minotaurs waiting for you there. There's only younger parts of you, frozen in time, waiting to be found and to be given resolution. You're stuck in that place. You just need to help it resolve, release, and adapt and move on. This is what I wish I knew years ago when I was trying to outsmart and outthink my own patterns and torture myself out of them. Before you move forward, you must take a deep breath and travel back, long enough to retrieve what has been left behind, what needs to be seen, felt, and finally released. You do not have to stay there just because you're going. You do not have to stay there. You do not have to dwell in the past, but to continue to bring back and recollect the parts of you that have been repeating the same story, hoping for a different ending. You're going to interfere and give them a different ending and a different experience so they can stop trying to change the unchangeable past. And so hopefully you will too then stop trying to change the unchangeable past by consistently and compulsively doing the same thing over and over again, but waiting for a different result. This is the path to emotional freedom that I believe in, and I've seen work for both myself and the people that I work with, which is why I implemented all of that into the program that I created as my foundational healing program. You deserve to be free. It's been long enough. I'll see you guys soon.